This car has been a long time coming. This is Ford's first mass-produced electric car ever, and it uses a very controversial badge on the bonnet, not a Ford oval, but a black pony, which means it's a Mustang. Or is it a Mustang? It doesn't matter whether you think it is or it isn't a Mustang. It's definitely an electric SUV crossover, and I'm going to take it out on the road today in the amazingly dismal British winter. I'm Jonny Smith, welcome to the Late Break Show. Before we have a drive, and that's what we want to do today really, let's have a look at the design of it, because this car's been unveiled about a year ago, but no one's been able to really drive it up until recently. And it's a controversial product from Ford, mostly because of the name. They had to make an EV, they're late to the EV game. The SUV genre is the most successful genre of car. You guys know, if you're a regular watcher of the Late Break Show, it's not my favourite genre of car, but I understand the reasons. And what I would say straight away is this is not really an SUV. I'd say it's more of a crossover than an SUV, because it's actually quite low to the ground. It hasn't got particularly high ground clearance, and it's also, I guess that's for aerodynamics. So let's talk design. Front end first. There's quite a big bonnet here, and according to Ford, they've given it a big bonnet because it's the spirit of muscle cars, the spirit of Mustang. Mustangs typically have big bonnets. And if you're wondering about the name, just before I've forgotten about the Mach bit, the Mach-1 is a Mustang model which has been around since the late 60s. The Mustang itself has been around since 1964. So this is the first new addition to the Mustang family in 55 years, really. And it's a completely radical departure compared to a muscle car, of course, a two-door coupe or a two-door convertible. And we are going to see a GT of this car, a GT version, which will have more aggressive styling, a bit like that Vaughan Gittin Jr. style kind of drift Ford Mach-e 1400 that I went in. If you haven't seen that video, I'll put the link up to here. And I think that actually kind of lends itself a little bit better. This is a particularly dull colour on a dull day, so I apologise for that on behalf of the British weather gods. Right, front end. So yeah, long bonnet, which I think is unnecessarily long really, and some really nice deep creases though here. I quite like those. You can really see where it dips away. Kind of looks like a Jaguar, like an XF or something like that. The headlights, you can see I've got the three kind of scratches in, a bit like the back end, and the back lights mimic the original Mustang lined lights, which I do like. They're individual. You'll see here, it doesn't actually have a grille. It has an indentation where a grille might go, which I think is all right. I'm okay with that. The bit I'm still not sure about is the moustache. This surround doesn't go all the way around. It reminds me of a Bandit's moustache. I'm not entirely sure a Ford El Bandito is the look that they were going for, but what I should say is there's no doubt that this car's a grower. The more I looked at it when I first saw it, its pictures emerged, the more I came around to the idea. The name, some people can't forgive it for being called a Mustang, for wearing that precious pony car moniker on what is a family SUV, practical, soundless car. I've come around to just going, do you know what, it's okay, Ford needs to make money. The reason why they've put that badge on there and not the Ford oval, by the way, if you want to know what a Ford oval looks like on it, it looks like this. But the reason why they haven't put a Ford oval on it, I suspect, is because this car is actually selling for more premium money, and the Mustang brand is the most premium brand that Ford currently has. You know, VW are doing the ID range, Mercedes are doing the EQ range, Ford are doing the Mustang Mach something range. So I guess that's what their idea is. Whether or not it lives up to that, this kind of price category, we'll see. Front bumper. In here are some active slits. You might see these can open and close at will. There's a liquid cooled battery pack in there. down under the floor, nice and low, and that's what that is for. Everything else is blanked off. There might be a little bit of an air gap up there, there's a camera there, but that's kind of it. Bugger me, it's cold today. At some point during the course of this video, we're going to slot in some like aspirational B-roll of the car being driven in Californian highways and palm trees and beautiful blue, grabber blue skylines. Not today here though, but we might use it here and there. We're doing a real world test today. Open the bonnet of the Mach-e and it's a sea of black plastic. This is a front boot, or a frunk if you're American, and it's about 100 litres, and it's all solid plastic, which means there's a drain hole down there. The theory being you can put wet stuff or grubby stuff in here if you want. There's some weird dividers which minimise the space, and I don't quite understand that, but it's an odd shape, but you can get some stuff in there, some shopping, a wetsuit, blah. What's interesting is they've gone to the effort of putting an embossed Mustang logo in there, but yet nothing here. There's no Ford badge, there's no Mustang thing. It's a bit plain. There's a push button in case you get trapped in there and you need to escape. It's very American law abiding, isn't it? Oh, washer bottle. Listen to this. Sounds like the incidental music on like a Scandi noir film or Terminator 2. Or maybe right at the beginning of Phil Collins' In the Air Tonight. Mach-e's got loads of sounds. It is snowy today. This is like the worst conditions for an EV in many ways. I didn't precondition it because I've only just got given the car. 72% when I got it. So it's 64% charged with 150 miles on the range-ometer. Right, off we go. So yeah, there's two flavours. Actually, there's four flavours of Ford Mustang Mach-e, and I'm saying Mach-e, not Mach-e, because I know that it is Mach-e, because the head of the communications and the head engineer of this project are both British, and they refer to it as Mach-e, not Mach-e. So just wanted to put that out there for every American person watching it. You can see when you're driving it actually that the dash top dips down into these two binnacles, which is the same as the original Mustang dash top actually. Yeah, you know, there's little harks to the muscle car here, but I think you should just really detach it from any kind of relationship that it has with a muscle car, because it doesn't really. This is an SUV, flat floor, full of cubby holes, 5 adults, a relatively big boot, certainly a big boot for a, you know, compared to a muscle car really, but it's a big flood, I know that much. Good thing about EVs is although they're high voltage, you know, I'm driving through a Ford basically, and the battery box is completely watertight sealed, so it's alright. It's more likely to be able to outweigh a piston car, because piston cars tend to inhale water through their air intake, so I wouldn't worry about that. I can tell you this, there's absolutely no way I would own an EQC Mercedes or an Audi e-tron of any type over this. I just think if you're going to buy an SUV type electric vehicle, then you want something with a decent range that's got some driving communication, and this is better than those two cars, I feel. I don't think it's at the moment, I don't think it's a better car than an iPace, but obviously this is a cheaper car than an iPace, only just in this spec. I'd rather have the Jag iPace in terms of aluminium build, better interior, slightly bigger boot, but I'm just glad that Ford have brought an electric car to the market finally, even if it hasn't got a proper Ford badge on it. You know why? Because Ford have dabbled in the electric car market slightly over the years. Back in the 60s, they did this concept called a Ford Commuter, which is this hilarious looking little box, which I think's quite cute. And then in the 2000s, they did the Ford Focus BEV, which wasn't mass produced, and by and large, from what I've heard, was shit. I've got to point out this car has the optional 10-speaker B&O, Bang & Olufsen system. There's a little badge down here and a little badge on the side of the dash top there. From what I've heard, it's incredible. I do still think that, I know that this is an attractive feature for a lot of people, having the big tablet, the Tesla style tablet, but for me, it's too big, and it goes against all of the effort that the designers have put into the dash. There's all these beautiful curves and things, and this is just, feels like it's just been screwed on lazily, but that's just me. I'm going to put it in driving mode, untamed, yes. Okay, I'm going to do a 0 to 62. What the hell? Might as well have got it. Clear road, ready, in the slush, 3, 2, 1. 100 kilometers in. Now, so yeah, this is not ever going to be, even in its forthcoming GT form, it's not going to be a Tesla insane, ludicrous mode beta. If you go for the rear-wheel drive extended range battery pack car, you can get some 379 miles WLTP according to Ford. So all of the Mach-E's variants have got pretty impressive ranges, certainly on paper. I'm not going to do a range test today. I tend not to do official range tests because the time I have for the car, it's really difficult to do, and the conditions that you drive that car in are always going to be varied, so it's not an accurate experiment. What I would say is that you get a pretty good idea when you're driving a car whether or not it's going to be efficient or not. I've just turned off the one pedal driving. It defaults to having no resistance until you press the brake pedal. And I've noticed the one pedal driving is really aggressive, and there's no paddles to adjust that. It's either on or off, from what I can tell. So if you're a kind of novice EV driver, you probably wouldn't want that one pedal drive. Just cruising through the town before we get out onto the open road, I've noticed it's very quiet here. I mean, the wipers are on because they have to be, and that's kind of it really. The seats are okay. They're sort of sportily trimmed with red stitching. They're a bit plain. The back seat's nice and flat, which I think is a good thing for extra passenger space. It's a bad thing for aesthetics, I guess. I've got my seat warmer on, and I do like the fact that, there you can see, look, I do like the fact that if you are going to have a touchscreen, at least have all the climate control and stuff permanently available rather than inside a menu. And this actual physical volume control on-off button here remains. That's good. I like that. We want more of that in our lives, because I can't help thinking that this sort of thing is a fad that will soon disappear. Mind you, I think that about SUVs in general. I think they're a fad that it won't be too long before we think they're slightly embarrassing and pointless and inefficient. But there you go. The challenge for a car like this is to sell in the most popular genre of car shape, the SUV/crossover, but obviously make itself as efficient as possible, which is why it's quite low to the ground. It's completely fared in front end, very efficient. It's very quiet. I know there's kind of an insulative special coating on the panoramic roof, which apparently keeps the warmth in or the sun out, which is good for the American market because there's no blind over it. You can't pull a blind over it. It's just permanent there. And that's optional, the same as the B&O 10-speaker stereo. Driving in the snow, 0 degrees. It is bitterly cold today. Got an adjustable steering column. I've got loads of room. I really like the footwells, feel pretty deep. The storage is plentiful, which I'm really pleased about. And it feels less sporty as a seating position than the Polestar 2, which has a really high centre console. because of the batteries in which it's orientated. But it feels better put together, and I'm getting more communication from the steering, and Ford are normally really good at steering. I'm definitely getting more of that on this than I would on a Tesla 3. My biggest worry at the moment really is that Ford have priced this quite high, and this car I'm driving is 58,000 quid, and this is the extended range, it's a bigger battery pack, all-wheel drive with half decent performance, and that is a gnat's whisker away from a base model Jag iPace. And although the range on these cars is good, ultimately it's still a Ford. Although saying that, as a package, it's definitely a better equipped package than an EQC Mercedes or an Audi e-tron. It's cheaper than all of those, and it'll outrun it on one charge. Oh, I said there's no Ford badges on this car. I have found one. It's up there on the windscreen glass. So there is one Ford blue oval on it. Everything else is ponies. There's one on the centre caps there. Brembo, fully floating, all aluminium calipers and here. This says Mach-e 4X. That means this is X for extended range. There's two ranges available, and the 4 means it's four-wheel drive because there's a motor at the front, there's a motor at the back. You can order this entry level as rear-wheel drive only. Delve into me, but oh yeah, charging. As standard, the standard range entry-level car, which starts in the UK at 40,300 quid, comes with 115 kilowatts of DC rapid charge, okay? But the higher ranking models like this one, which is the extended range and it's the twin motor, is up to 150 DC, 150 kilowatts DC charge. And this, just like the Jaguar I-Pace and the e-tron, actually is in the sort of front wing area. There's not one on the other side, it's just this side. Move down the side. I actually think the side profile of this car is really good. It's got this strange bit of blacked out area here. Can you see that is the top of the roof, not that? But from that angle, you think it looks like it's a really sloping coupe, but it's not. This crease here is a big wave, an indentation, and this haunch is all Mustang. So they have incorporated Mustang-ness into an SUV, which is a bit of a crazy combination, and these are 19-inch wheels. They look tiny to me, but they are 19s. You'll probably see the door handles. The door handles are a bit odd. There's no physical pull handles, levers. Ford have got a push button there, and then this little kind of ledge, I suppose you'd call it, to open and shut. So when you press it, the door comes out a bit like so. And there's a keypad on here. Now this is funny. Back in the 80s, Ford pioneered this keypad in America where you could start your car and leave your car running with the keys in and then shut your car with the keypad. It's basically a PIN number. Ford have still got it. They've incorporated on this. So you can open this car with a key, with your phone on an app, which is called the Ford Pass system. There's a dedicated app, or old school keypad. Ah, there we go. There we go. Again, you push the button, it pops out an inch or so, and then you can get, I have to say the back doors are actually pretty big, and the entry is very good. We'll do the cabin in a sec. Black arches, again, and this bit of black on the sill, there's a crease here. It makes the body look shallower from a distance. You think that the body ends there, but it doesn't. It most definitely comes all the way down there. So it's actually quite a low-bellied car. It's less than 6 inches off the ground, which is not really very SUV-like. You do get lots of weird sound effects, and they do change when you go into the top left here. You press the little Mach-e logo. You've got 3 driving modes. It defaults, I think, to active. Whispers where it's as quiet as possible, and I think it's the most relaxing. And then in America they called it unbridled mode, good horse connection. We have Untamed. That's when things get red on the controls. Throttle is sharpened right up. I can feel the weight of the steering, the electric power steering changes, and I'm getting a sound in the cabin that sounds like a piston engine. You might not be able to hear it because we're going through tons of slush. I'm just going to stop talking and see if we can get it. You hear that? So you're getting a kind of a whoosh of electric motor and then a kind of a synthesized throb. There's a lot of synthesized sounds going on here. As I showed you before, there's like the weird maneuvering sound, which is like a sinister synth. Sounds like incidental music on a film, maybe a murder scene. And then you're getting a bit of Blade Runner, you're getting a bit of, apparently a bit of Batmobile sound, Christian Bale era Batmobile sound. So yeah, people are playing around with the sounds. And if you've watched my other video of the Mach-e 1400 with Vaughn Gittin Jr., the pro drift driver, that has all kinds of crazy sound effects. And I actually think a more sporty, kind of leery looking, bewinged looking Mach-e looks better. And in the pictures, the forthcoming Mach-e GT, which will be the top ranking car of this type, I actually think that probably suits this shape the best. Because it is an odd one, this car, isn't it? It's kind of, I can't help thinking this is Mustang gender fluidity, or gender fluid Mustang, in that it kind of is a bit of Mustang, rear lights, front lights, pony logo, but it isn't a Mustang because it's not a two-door coupe muscle car. So it kind of, does it know what it is? Do we care what it is? Are we in just this modern world now where it can be whatever it wants to be? It can identify as something different? I'm not sure. What I do know is that Ford treated this car as a completely unique project. It's not really based on anything. It doesn't feel particularly Fordy in many ways. And I did find a blue oval key though. So although there's no Ford badges really, apart from the windscreen glass, it does say Ford on the badge there, when I think they've probably missed a trick because they could have put the pony logo just on there. Hey ho. You can't hide the fact that the performance of the Mach-e, whatever flavour you buy it in, top spec, which is 390 horsepower I think. The forthcoming GT is going to be 465 PS I think. It doesn't matter which way you kind of market it, it's not as quick a dragster as a Tesla. And this car is coming out to the market late. It really is. You know, Ford should have had an EV product out several years ago and they haven't. So there's a lot of weight resting on this thing. And I'm surprised they haven't done a cheaper car first, but that's just me. The investment in this thing will be huge. I have to say, I do really like the steering. The ride is firm, but good firm. I don't think it's crashy. It doesn't feel too bad. I apologise, I'm just going to have to stop while two pheasants cross the road. Or are they grouse? They might be grouse. Going to go along here. Yeah, this is a slushy, horrible road today. I'm feeling the grip is excellent. The steering's quite quick actually. Feels quick to me. It's a world first. It's a Ford Mustang that's a hatchback. Power tailgate. Voila. Now, obviously this is an SUV / crossover thing, so it's a family car, it's supposed to be practical. 400 litres of boot space, which I think is smaller than a Tesla Model Y. And by the way, I haven't ever driven a Tesla Model Y yet. We can't buy them in the UK yet, so I apologise. This is also, I think, smaller than like a Ford Focus 5-door hatchback. Coupled with the fact that because they've tried to make it more coupe-like, this is very much cut off. So if you're expecting to put a dog in here, I think it's going to have to be a very small dog. There's this weird sunshade thing, which is, can you see it? It's like a fabric sunshade. I had a similar one on my Chevy Volt, which I guess you can just remove. There's a false floor, so if you lift this, if you lift this false floor, see that? You can lower this down a bit more. There's the charging gubbins underneath there. It's a nice flat entry, pretty much flat entry point on the Mach-e, and there's 12 volt, you know, coupling and stuff. But you know, I just can't help thinking that the point of an SUV is supposed to be that you fit more stuff in and it's more practical. But is it though? Is it? Anyway, shut the boot for a nicer looking experience, because I do like, this is probably my favourite angle of the Mach-e is the rear 3/4. These lights, this haunch and this roof line, it does look good. It's a real grower, and these are of course a variation of what you can buy on the Mustang muscle car. Rear wiper, owners of a Jaguar I-Pace, observe, wiper. I've said this before, but I'm actually quite down with the mantra of having an EV for weekday duties and maybe your average commutes, and then having a piston, a special rewarding piston thing for the weekend. Because I think we live in a world where it's silly to try and get people to totally stop certain things. Like, I'm going to say I've got plastic in my bin at home. I don't like the fact I've got single-use plastic at home, but it's really difficult to buy stuff these days that doesn't have single-use plastic wrapped on it. It's very hard indeed. But I'm trying to reduce that, and I reduce the amount of petrol that I burn on a weekly or monthly basis, but I do still have some piston cars. But I tend to use those piston cars, or they tend to be more interesting cars that I use seldom. What Ford is kind of saying with this is you can drive a Mach-e every day during the week and do most of your driving zero emission, school run, etc. And then maybe you could have a Mustang V8 for a weekend thing, a treat. So when you do use a real engine, you cherish the rear engine a bit more. And that's totally what I've always been trying to harp on about. When you get in the Mach-e, it's a nice place actually. You've got this kind of double sandwich dash which has all the air vents going through the middle, like the filling on a cake, and the top bit is this tasteful kind of tweedy fabric. Quite minimal apart from the very obvious 15.5-inch screen, big portrait tablet, unmistakably taken a leaf out of Tesla's book, but half an inch bigger than the Tesla one. And it does have a physical knob at the bottom for volume and stuff like that. Also at the bottom, although it is touchscreen, it stays permanently on there, which is the stuff for the climate control, things like the heated seats and the demister. The other part of the screen here has all the other infotainment, and it's got Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, and you press in the top left the Mustang logo, and that's what comes up with drive modes, which there's 3 of, the different camera angles, driver assistance modes, that kind of stuff. I've had a little bit of a flick. I've only had this car for a very short time, and it's pretty easy to navigate. Ford Sync infotainment system has always been really easy to pair a phone to and get your head around quickly. And of course now there's an app, which is I actually downloaded it this morning, the Ford Pass app, and I've got it here. And this allows me to unlock the car similar to a Tesla, and lock the car and preheat the car with functions like that. So that's really useful. The other thing that these 2 apps do, the Sync version for this car now allows you to find the nearest charging station and advises you on your journey of where you can go and recharge, which is all really useful. But aside from that, what I would say is the cars that I'm comparing this to are things like the Polestar 2, the Jaguar I-Pace for the flagship kind of version, because the flagship version of this car is 58 grand, and that creeps right into the Jag I-Pace territory, I think. So Polestar 2, Tesla Model S, Y, maybe top spec 3, depending on what your flavour is. I like the fact that, unlike the Polestar, it's got a very low centre console, and there's loads of storage here. Underneath this armrest, the depth of this storage box is like this. You could get stuff lost in there. Get in the back of the Mach-e, and actually this is probably the most impressive part of the cabin in terms of practicality. Flat floor car, completely flat actually. So 3 adults can sit side by side, or you've obviously got the armrest if you want just 2 with some cup holders. You've got USB A and C here with your heater outlets. I'm sat behind myself and I've got a load of leg room and knee room, and I can fit my feet underneath. My head is okay actually. It's got these weird kind of dugouts for your head inside here, and because we've got the panoramic roof, which is an option, you've got a little bit, you've probably got an inch more space because of that piece of glass. I actually think it's good back here. I think it's practical, and it's more spacious than the Polestar back here. Jag iPace probably a little bit smaller, and of course because it's this sort of coupe silhouette, it's always going to be sloping away, but it's mostly the boot that suffers rather than the people here. Oh, bit of ice. I've not driven the rear wheel drive version. I'll be driving that in a month or two, so I haven't got that to compare it to at the moment, but I'd very much like to, because I'm warming to the idea if I was to spec one of these Mach-Es, I'd go for rear wheel drive, longer extended range battery, the 88 kilowatt hour usable, with winter tyres in this kind of weather. That's just my personal preference. I don't know how rear wheel drive it will feel. A lot of EVs that I've driven, they don't really feel as rear drive as you think they will. I've not been able to drive hard into corners because of the weather that I'm driving it in, the slush and the sleet. But I definitely get the feeling that although I know it's carrying weight like most long range EVs are, it's carrying it low down, and the suspension is calibrated to be a very communicative, firm ride. Both steering, throttle, and you know what, even in the kind of relaxed mode, the throttle's very eager. These roads have definitely not been treated, and it's been sleeting like this all day. And I really like the directness of the steering on the Mach-E. I'm not doing a really long drive for this test. Two reasons: A, I'm not really allowed to by law, and two, the weather's pretty bad for us to try and film. Otherwise I would. But look, here we go, 50% charge, 51%, 107 miles. I've had it in a combination of modes, and I've been doing some faster driving. Fords are very rarely disappointing in the chassis department, very rarely. They always know how to put together a chassis and a steering combination which excites. This particular Mach-E has got normal sprung suspension that isn't adjustable. Apparently the GT model, which will be the range topper, that'll be some 60 grand, that is going to have MagneRide, which is magnetically adjustable suspension. We'll see. We've waited so long for Ford's all-electric new car, and not even snow and horrible weather was going to stop me from test driving the Mach-E. I have to say, whether you care about its looks or whether you don't, and I happen to like some parts of it and not quite so many others, I think it's a very, very convincing package. More convincing than I thought when I first read about it and looked at pictures of it. And you know what? If you look at the Mustang badge and you're offended by the fact that it's on a non-muscle car, you know what? I own a Dodge Charger, a classic one, and I'm offended by the fact that the current Dodge Charger is a four-door saloon that isn't very well proportioned. So, you know, you can't have it all. What do I think about this car as an electric family SUV crossover? Well, I think it's roomy inside, and I think it's pretty well appointed. I think that I would probably buy it in rear-wheel drive rather than all-wheel drive, mostly from a price point of view, because to drive, the all-wheel drive is brilliant. I would probably want the bigger battery pack as well. I would want to be spending around 45 grand really. As soon as it gets beyond that, I think it becomes a less convincing package. And you have to compare it to cars like the Polestar 2, the Tesla Model Y, or the High-Spec 3. So if you're going to be buying it nearly 58, 59 grand, you've got to look at the Jaguar I-Pace, which I think is a fantastic car and probably going to be going out of production soon. But I do think that Ford have done a good job here. I do think that this car, I do think it's been worth waiting for, and I welcome with open arms Ford into the world of electrification. Welcome aboard, Ford. Thank you so much for watching the Late Break Show. I hope you've enjoyed this. What do you think of the Mustang Mach-E? Maybe have a comment below and let me know. If you haven't subscribed already, click subscribe and the bell icon, then you'll know I put a video up every week. If you're a Patreon and you're a patron, so you support me through Patreon, thank you so much for doing that. Makes a massive, massive difference. I'm going to put my heated steering wheel on because, damn it, it's good in there.